And now I think we have a clip to show of the pitch.
Come on, up for school. All right, get in the shower. Seriously, one time and up, okay? Shower. Do not make me come back. Come on, Dad's not here to do the 3 times in a row, right? I give you one wake-up call and that's it. My husband's in Las Vegas at a convention, and it's like a joke around here when he's gone because he does everything, and I just try to keep people alive and fed in some way, shape, or form. I'm gonna make you toast with peanut butter, because that's all we have. Will you eat it? No, I won't burn it. I'll try not to burn it. Being a woman in this industry, I have definitely made sacrifices. There's not a day where I'm not, burning a piece of toast or missing a load of laundry in order to do what I have to do. For me, that's a balancing act that I've been working on perfecting for 18 years, and I still don't have it down. If I had been a stay-at-home mom, my entire family would be in psychotherapy now. They probably will be someday anyway, but I wasn't cut out for it, and I knew that about myself. And in fact, I would say that working makes me a better mother, just because my kids seeing me have a career and liking it is good for them.
That was very brave to have a morning. I don't know if I'd let a TV crew in on our mornings, but I'd love to know more, Liz, about how you found balance. When we were emailing, you said when your kids were young, you got some really important advice, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
I did. I think it's inevitable that you're going to struggle with how do you do both well, because it's not a business that really is something you control. It controls you. And I quickly found myself feeling incredibly guilty about the sacrifices I was making for work and taking away from my children. And it was weird. We had a consultant come in who was just working with managers and trying to help us, just be better managers. And she asked me, what's your biggest issue? And I said, well, this whole juggling act mom thing. I was like, I'm not pulling it off very well. And I feel awful because I'm missing dance recitals or whatever, or I go to something and then I feel like I'm leaving somebody at work in a lurch or whatever. But mostly it was, I'm not showing up as the mom I want to be. And she said, so how does that happen? And I said, well, if I know something's coming that I should be at as a mom, it's literally up to the hour before, am I going to be able to make it, right? Am I going to be able to get out of here? Can I get something off my desk in time? Can I, whatever. And she said, well, you're just doing it all wrong. She said, from now on, here's what you're going to do. You're going to marker in your family and pencil in work. Just do it. And I was like, really? She said, just do it, right? And it was the most amazingly empowering thing I've ever done. So I never wondered if anymore. It was, I am. Of course, that was very nerve-wracking because I thought, well, am I going to get fired? What happens if I do have something? And it was remarkable. People are very supportive. People were like, yeah, we'll cover for you or whatever. And so instead of trying to sneak out or anything, I was just really honest about it. I was like, hey, on Tuesday, I've got to be somewhere at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or I'm going to miss the morning, next week. And people really rallied around, and it has worked for me. Now, I think, I got lucky with where I am and the support system I had around me. So I can't I can't take all the sort of the glory for it. I think I just was in a culture that was ready and willing to support it. But it was incredibly empowering, just taking away the question mark of will you be there or not.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely use that piece of advice for my own schedule. And I was so sure when Kat had first asked me to moderate that birth would be the death, but of CDs. But then reading all of your bios and talking to Christy, that my notion changed and it became a much more complex issue. And Christy, we were talking on the on email, and you said that you didn't really find that in your recruiting, that the mommy problem, and you had some tips for some women that are maybe taking time off. I was wondering if you could share those.
Sure. I have some good news for you all out there. In the 10 years independently I've been recruiting, I get phone calls from CEOs looking for ECDs. And I would clearly say about 95% of them over the last 5 years subtly nudge and suggest I find a woman. So
That is good news.
it's real good news. Well, you know, we're not supposed to tell you what gender because it's not HRPC, but I even had, and I don't know if she's here today, but I did have a human resource director call me about 2 weeks ago who needs an executive creative director. And she also nudged to me that a woman would be great. So that's fantastic news. Really quickly, because we have so many great people on this panel, but the problem is where we're seeing a little bit of hesitation about hiring moms is male executive creative directors. So that would be the male executive creative directors requesting creative directors. And it's just like, well, are they going to have the time? Are they going to? But I think there's something underneath it. And this is just my theory, but I've been working with it for a long time. I think that a lot of times the executive male creative directors are very fearful that mom CDs in our industry are not up on relevant culture. They don't know what Gangnam Style is. Do they have time for Pinterest? Do they know even what Twitter is? And so to lead into the other answer is, I think that underlying is an underlying thing aside from the time. So I think as a mom and as a creative director, one of the most important things you can combat if you're going to try and get a creative director position underneath the male ACD is to have killer social media. And that means tweets about Gangnam Style. Am I saying it right?
Which we're going to be doing later for all of you who don't know what that is.
Okay, but you know, if you don't know what that is, then, but you're a busy mom, right? But if you're away on maternity leave, turn on that computer and go see what's going on in the world and retweet whomever you need to retweet. But there is your record of I'm staying current. And it's your craft. So embrace that. But now you all have an opportunity to, I think that's really a big question for them. So you're not a soccer mom. You're somebody who knows who Gangnam is.
And I think, yeah,
and that makes a very big impression to them.
That's great tips for anybody, even if you're not a mom yet or have older kids. I think that's.
I just want to add that my secret weapon is my children. So they're the ones that keep me up to date. They're the ones who showed me Gangnam Style 3 months ago.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
But right.
Yeah, they are. I just got introduced to it, but now I'm a pro. Now I can do it. Paige has a new baby, and so if you could talk to us a little bit about how that transition, I think that would be helpful for women to hear.
Well, I think it's funny talking about social media. That's kind of what got me through late night feedings. So that was sort of how I kept myself, kept my finger on the pulse there. But I'm 2 months back at work, so I'm still very fresh and still honestly figuring it out. But for the most part, I think the anticipation of going back was a lot worse than when I actually walked through the door. And I realized that I was really battling with who was I before and who am I now and what's expected of me, really. Will people look at me differently? And then once I found that I actually got back in there, it's a lot of it is sort of in your head, and you have to remember that you worked really hard to be a part of this 3%. Every person in this room, no matter what level you are in this industry, you're working really hard. And I think you just have to remind yourself that you are always going to bring amazing things to the table. And as a new mom, I think I was afraid I wouldn't be able to put the same amount of time in, but I still wanted to be able to bring great leadership to the table, great mentorship to the table, and hopefully put out amazing product and add a new view to it now that I'm a new mom. You know, what can I bring to the table, even from a process perspective in our agency that is different than before I had this little guy. And I think I'm still figuring it out, but you know, I think you have to get over the guilt of leaving your little one at home, and then the guilt you have for your other one, which is your creative life. It's funny, before when Kat actually approached me about this, I started thinking about all the common parallel words that are between having a baby and having a creative concept. You know, you create something, you invent, you nurture it, you have to compromise, you overanalyze, and you lose sleep, and all these things were kind of, you know, parallels between having a baby and trying to put out like an amazing campaign. You deal with a lot of poo-poo. And so it was just, I realized there were a lot of great parallels, and I'm trying to apply that every day, and I'm trying to take one day at a time, or else you can get pretty overwhelmed. I've had some good support at work. I think there can always probably be, you know, more support at work, from what I hear from other women too, and you know, I can get into that. But you know, I think, like I said, I think it's just the transition was just take a deep breath. Try not to cry too much when you leave them, and it's getting easier. It's getting easier every day.
And it'll keep getting easier. Like,
Good,
I was
I
like,
need
that
to
was
hear
my
that.
first two, and then when my third one, I was like running back to work.
I need to hear
My
that.
household was too crazy. But Chrissy, I pulled a quote from your website. It said, "I came up through the legendary boys club of Madison Avenue, so I thought it was a crazy idea to focus only on women. But the facts are indisputable. Turns out women fuel the world, if not run it." And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about why you started your business, Womenkind, and then a little bit about why it's so important to maintain women in the creative process.
So I worked at all the big Madison Avenue agencies that you've heard of. You know, in New York, we tend to move around a lot, jump around. And all of them, for the most part, my first job was at BBDO, I mean, a massive boys club. And what my partner and I started to notice as we moved up the ranks is there were fewer and fewer women, and we became the token women's team whenever there was a so-called, you know, women's account. And it got a little frustrating to us because we were at one big agency, and you know, we win some tequila account, some $2 million tequila account, and there's a big party on the floor for all the creatives are really excited. Well, my partner and I spearheaded a pitch for a big Fortune 500 company. It was more than $100 million, but it was a woman's product. Not so much as an email went out announcing this thing. And it was that kind of discrepancy. We've heard a lot about that today, about how, you know, the men get put on the type of accounts like beer and cars that win awards, and the women get put on, you know, the baby shampoo and the hairspray, and that just doesn't. So your career kind of bifurcates. And it was actually when I had my first baby, I came back after 3 months of being away, and like you, just feeling like the world is going to change. And I came back, and there was a creative guy in our department who had done some prison blue jean campaign and was now promoted to be the executive creative director. So he was ostensibly my boss, although you know how it is in a creative department. You don't necessarily always, but you could not bring this guy to a meeting at my clients who were all like Ivy League MBAs. You could not bring him there. And he's like skateboarding around the halls with his little woolly hat on, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, how can I work for this guy? How can I do this? And that was part of what inspired Womenkind, but also, you know, just the business case. Media's fragmenting, there's no longer mass. It's all about niches. Women are the most powerful niche. We spend the most money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the business case really persuaded us to do it. But I have to tell you, honestly, I'm being perfectly honest, like 10 years ago when I was in the big agency, I wish I was working on the tequila account and not the birth control pill. Right. Even though I was managing so much more, there's just such a bad feeling, I think, for a woman where you're thinking, I could do that. Why aren't I doing that?
Right, and it seems like that sexism is coming up a little bit more than maybe motherhood, although it seems like the structure of the companies also depend on whether you can maintain it when you're coming back.
Well, and the sexism is subtle. I mean,
Right.
Nobody says, you've got a baby at home, you shouldn't be working on the tequila account. Nobody ever says that.
Definitely be working on tequila.
But you're not, exactly. But you're not, you're not, and you don't want to be in the agency at 9 o'clock at night doing shots, coming up with ideas, and you're not really interested in spending the whole weekend with a bunch of guys. It's just not what you want to be doing. You want to get your work done and go home. That said, and I'm sure you guys all find it too, being a creative is something you can't turn off. It's a 24/7, maybe not a job, but it's a 24/7 orientation. And I think it's the very same with being a mother. You don't turn that off either. So these two facets of your brain are in, there's like a constant battle for share of mind, I find.
Yeah, and that brings me to an interview I watched with Liz where you talked about that you brought your kids into your work, and they really created an important piece of making your family work, that they were able to understand and support what you were doing. And so I guess you were able to bring them to work, or how did that
there's
happen?
always some occasion where it's like, hey, come with me today, or it's a teacher work day, or whatever it is. And I'm from a very young age, I had them in there, and we had like the little Razor scooters. I'd put a little basket on the front, and they'd go run chores for everybody, right? So they would deliver things, to different people's offices, and people would put a dime in. So they always felt sort of part of the process. I took them to a shoot. So that part to me was make sure that they understand the value of what I'm doing. And I don't know when I decided this, but very early on, I promised myself I would never, ever apologize to them for working or missing something, ever, because that makes it wrong, right? So there could be, hey, it's too bad I'm going to miss this, but next time, and you know what I'm doing? Here's what I'm doing. And it's really funny because there were times when they got to ages, they're like, Mommy, don't go, and then, kills you. And I'm like, don't apologize, don't apologize. And then I actually got to a point where, somewhere when they were around 10 years old, I was like, I just got to get out of this business, right, and spend more time with them. And I remember started talking to them about, what would you think if Mom stayed home? And they were just old enough at that point. They're like, oh, no. No. I'm like, because, I'm like, we would have to cut back on our lifestyle and everything. Like, no. You need to go to work. We need our Nikes.
Yeah.
So it kind of came full circle, but.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice to integrate into to children so that you get less of that. Does add so much to the guilt.
And it's interesting, my daughter who, she's a sophomore in college. She's come to me and said, I think I want to do what you do. And I'm like, don't do that. I did not say that. I said, well, this is going to be your path, but, I'm not sure. Well, and here we are talking about women in advertising.
Right.
I'm trying to decide whether, whether this world deserves her.
Right.
Yeah.
Or whether she'd do something better somewhere else.
That's so interesting. So what exactly about it that makes you hesitant to recommend it?
Well, this is kind of going off a little bit about the whole social media and all of that kind of thing. I think for starters, I'm just old. This business has changed so much that I see the role of creative is so different than when I got in the business. It is very digital now, which is awesome. And this is just one person's observation, I think you need to have an inner geek to want to do that stuff and immerse yourself in it all the time. And I don't think that's particularly female, right? So when I ask her things like, well, what is it about being a writer that you would want to do? And I think she actually sees more of sort of like TV commercials and things like that. And I said, well, no, actually, more and more of it is going towards digital. And still, there's wonderful opportunities there. Coming up with content and all that is really exciting stuff. But I do think it's changed, and I do wonder about that. And I think it's great that they're having a session upstairs about women in digital, because I look at our own creative department, and we're all very versed in digital. We have a lot of women in our creative department, but there's only a couple of women who I actually see, like, they get off on it, and I don't think that it comes as naturally to most women as it does to guys.
Yeah, and it starts really young. My boys are like
all over the screens,
over
right?
the screens, and no matter how much I try to give my daughter all of their hand-down toys, because I hate dolls, she's all over the pink dollies.
Yeah.
And so it's they pop out that way. But,
I know.
But I would be interested, Christy, to see if you sort of see that skew too when it comes to sort of placing women now that things are moving more to the digital. Are you seeing fewer women stepping up?
What I see is there's like an invisible line, and men aren't afraid to cross that line. And I think men incorporate being social with business. And women stand on this side of the line, and they think that that's none of anybody's business in business. And I personally try and encourage women to step over that line and be you in all your glory and all your non-glory, and to tweet and to socialize and to tell the world what your experience is, get some followings, and you know, you said the inner geek and all that, you know, but you really, I screen my Twitter followers really carefully. They're all people in the ad industry, and so when I go to Twitter, I look at it like I'm talking to my people in Sweden and China, and so as a woman, that really excites me to go onto the computer, because it's not Twitter, it's, oh my gosh, I can get to reach out to all these amazing human beings all over the planet. So I think we're coming a long way. I just think that women have a more innate, and I think it's how we were raised as women. Putting yourself out there, being accessible. How do you say?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's harder.
it's not really the nice girl image, is it? But what I try to say is just take a deep breath, be really brave, be your glorious self, and you'd be amazed how many people and something like that.
It reaches
Did I
and
answer the
touches.
question?
Yes, totally. And I think that that's really interesting too, because for me personally, I don't have a Twitter, even though my business is social networking. I have to hire somebody for it because I just don't, with 3 kids, have the time. And I'm not good at it. But it was interesting, Paige, that you said you did find time, so that makes me hopeful that you can.
Well, and I don't know if it's the San Francisco market, and I'm sure it's the same in New York. I think, you know, I'm with a digital agency, and I think that you have to, whether you want to or not really, you have to stay a part of that if you're going to be relevant in a digital, you know, agency particularly. You know, it is a geek thing. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think there are, and whether it comes naturally or not, I mean, I do know some women, and maybe they're, you know, maybe a little bit more younger, and they are, it's maybe more natural in how they have been introduced to it, even if there's a difference of 10 years, that it's something that's coming more naturally to them. Maybe it's an age thing, but I do think that it's absolutely necessary, and you know, it's still about the idea. It's just where the ideas are being channeled. So, you know, I find, especially in San Francisco, because we also have so many tech clients out here too. It's everywhere you look. You can't really avoid it. So, you know, I think naturally you see it everywhere, and you have to adapt and
Yeah, you have to be
and know it.
ready to take on something new. It feels like every day there's a new app you have to know how.
And
to
as a
do
mom,
and
I mean, I
access.
do feel that it is how you stay connected. I'm not getting out these days, you know, and I love to see what my friends are doing. You know, they're all out, you know, having brunch, or, you know, their dogs are playing together.
Now you know it all.
Yeah, and so you know everything, and you're sort of like, great, I still feel like I'm a part of it, so when you see each other, you still feel like you're
Enough.
enough,
Yeah.
right?
The way we talk about social media at Womenkind is that it's just another way to have a conversation. And you know, women love conversation. Women like to talk to each other. So Pinterest, for example, is just a great way to share something that you saw, the way you might be shopping with a friend and go, oh, isn't that cute? It's just a technological platform to do that, but we try not to focus too much on the technology of it, which I think is the sort of the geek and the intimidating factor, and the same with Twitter. It's just another way to have a dialogue with somebody.
Right. Right, and I was wondering about Womenkind, about how many employees you have, and if you're trending toward more women.
We are very small. We're 12 people. We've only been in business about 3 years. Everybody has, you know, bigger agency pedigree. We have 3 guys. The rest of us are women. We don't discriminate against men. We love men, but they have to have a certain sensitivity as well as a certain acumen. We're very insight-driven, our agency. So, I mean, I've worked at agencies and on certain types of accounts that never had an insight, didn't even really have a strategy. It was more like, it's Charles Barkley, what are you going to do with him? You know, it was always an account like that. So our agency, because we focus on women, we're very insight-driven, and we really focus on trying to understand what she's thinking and try to stay ahead of that. So men have to have that type of orientation, or they don't last.
And I wonder too if men are ready too to say, oh, I work for a company called Womenkind. I wonder if you.
There's a lot of jokes, a lot of reverse sexism at our place, where you know the men have their tail between their legs a lot. So yeah, no, it's really fun. What doesn't happen at Womenkind is there's no Monday morning quarterbacking about all the football games the day before, because you know most of us kind of knew it was on but didn't pay attention. So but I've worked at agencies where it was all about sports all the time, because all the guys is what they're always talking about. So that doesn't happen at our place. But if there's a good sample sale on 7th Avenue, we are gone.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you've worked, a lot.
In boys clubs.
Yes.
Pretty much all of New York is.
So
Yeah.
you've had to deal with a lot. And I'm wondering what tips that you might have for women that are going back in, because you went back in at a time when you were in a boys club, so that would probably be much different than working for you in your company.
The
now.
best advice that I got, and I love the advice that you got, and I'm taking that home with me. Never say you're sorry. But the best advice I got, believe it or not, when I came back from having my baby, I was very conflicted and stressed out about, you know, leaving the baby behind. And somebody said to me, and with the nanny and, you know, that kind of thing, and somebody said to me, the nanny is now the most important person in your life. So, you know, treat her as valuable as you would anyone you love dearly. And I did that. I always took great care of my nanny, and it was because of her, and she was very young, and now I have an au pair, but because of her, I was able to meet the demands of my job, because, you know, as you guys were saying, you never know if you can walk out the door, you know, even if you have a haircut appointment, you never know if you can make that or not. So just having that one person that you know you can rely on, it really makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that really resonated with me. My nanny is my children's godmother. So every time I go on vacation, she's like, please don't die.
Yeah.
Don't let anything happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. They do. You have to be willing to almost have. For me, I call her our other mommy. She's can't have kids, and I'm like, this is perfect. You know, we will share. And
The hardest thing was when I realized that my daughter loved her.
Yeah.
And it was my partner who said to me, it's the best thing that could ever
Best
happen.
thing.
That's what you want. Make that, you know, do
Yes.
more of that. And it's
Have
so
it
true.
grow, because there's plenty of love for everybody. So I think we're going to open it up to questions pretty soon, but I was just going to see if any of you had any other tips or advice or things that you'd want to share before we open it up to questions. No? We'll open it up. Does anybody have questions in the audience? Do we have a mic? Or no?
Do we need a mic?
Do we need a mic? We don't need a mic. We could just, okay. Raise your hand if you had a question
there it
again.
is.
Sorry.
There's the mic.
There's the mic. We have lots of questions.
Hi. So as creative directors and as leaders within your agencies with the ability to kind of shape the conversation around your return to your team, what's the conversation like that you have with your team when you're setting those boundaries and saying, I'm a mom now. I'm going to leave at 5 to pick up my kid, and I'll be later to work, you know, from home, but this is how it's going to be?
Well, I'm new at it, but I found that I never wanted to be that. I don't know why it happens, but you know, there's that moment when you see the mom walking out the door, and as a younger person, you say, "There they go." You know, I see a lot of heads nodding out there. And I did it. And I don't know if it was because I wasn't spoken to in the right way or if I just didn't understand. I understand now, and that is for sure. And I think the important thing is that when you are telling your team, and this is what I said to my team, is that I am completely available, between the hours of 8:30 and 5:30, and I'm trying to get out the door at 5:30 to get home to relieve the nanny. Then I'm on again after at 8 o'clock, and I'm completely free to look at work after that. And I remember hearing other mothers saying that they do that, and I just remember thinking, how in the world do you do it? And you make it work. I mean, it has to happen. So I think you have to have very clear conversations with your team and set boundaries, and make them feel as valuable as you try and make your family feel. I mean, a lot of the people I've worked with have been like family to me. So I think it's really important that you want to maintain that respect, and you just want to make sure that they feel that you're not letting them hang. You are going to be there. It's just, you have a few tasks you have to get to, and if they know you and respect you, hopefully they'll understand.
I mean, I think that's right. They just want to know. They just want to, they don't want to be left in a lurch. So you make the hours. I'm available here, and you do it. I think the other thing is I really try to tell the guys to do the same thing. There's a lot of young dads in our creative department, and they look at me like I'm crazy sometimes. I'm like, you need to go. We'll take care of this later. And it's like they don't even know what to do with that, because that's not how they're wired. Mm-hmm. They're wired to be like, but that's not the my wife understands or whatever. It's like, no, go be a dad. And they're so relieved, like they love that. And so then they begin to be more understanding of me not being there at like 7, right? Because it's always like get home, spend some time together, then get back on later at night. So I think it's just as important to impress upon the guys,
right,
to be great dads.
Yeah, the guys at home and your partner guys, because if they are starting to be held accountable, I'll be home, at 5 o'clock this day, but you have to be home at 5 o'clock that day because that's my work day. So those are helpful tools too. It was really hard for my husband and I. He was the editor of the Chronicle when we had kids, and I was like, doesn't matter, you got to be home too. We got to share in this. And
sometimes you fight over who's going to work late, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I actually remember I got paired with this guy. He was going to be my GCD partner. This was a couple of years ago, and I was like, this is never going to work. He was the guyest guy. He had no kids, and my thing is like, I got to go, and I'll be back. And I was just like, this is going to be a disaster. His wife got pregnant, and they had twins.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, thank you, God. And he was just like, gotta go. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, gotta go. I'm like, yes, you do.
Right, so you never know. You just got to put it out there and just trust
And when
your
he melted,
instinct.
he became like the softest, sweetest guy in the whole world once he had kids.
Really sweet. So, another questions?
This is more of a comment than a question, but I have counseled a few people that I've worked with who start to feel overwhelmed by the hours in the creative department, and they lament that their life has skewed now more toward work, whether they have kids or not, and haven't been working out, and I'm so stressed and a thing. And a lot of times I'll say, pretend you just had a baby. Just pretend you just had a baby, and guess what? You now have permission to leave at 5:30. Like, you almost have to have that philosophy, like, it's okay for me to leave at 5:30 because I have kids, and I can say that legitimately, but I think a lot of women who don't then feel slighted, or they get to leave and I don't, then all of a sudden you go, you can take your life back, just pretend you had a baby.
Right, that's great
Walk out the
advice.
door.
Yeah,
That's great
absolutely.
advice.
I also wonder how much of that, like I look at sort of the way we work daily, there's a lot of dysfunction, and I think it's true in advertising, and so you have to ask yourself, why am I here so late? Why am I working weekends? And I know, and we've really tried to work on this, we put creative people in so many meetings during the day that they don't actually start working till like 6 o'clock at night. That's just messed up. Yeah. Right? So we started this thing like no meetings, until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, no Monday client presentations. So we really, and it sticks for a little while, and then but we're at least we're trying. And so that whole thing about working crazy hours, it's industry wide. But I honestly don't think it's because it takes that long to come up with great ideas. I mean, it does sometimes, but I think it has more to do with the dysfunction of, well, in our case, meetings, and just how we spend our time.
Yeah.
It perpetuates itself, too.
It does.
And I think, at least in our company, we really set boundaries around that. And just like you, we try not to have any presentations on a Monday. We try not to have, I've been in agencies where meetings are called at 7 or 7:30 at night.
Yeah.
So we try not, it's dinner time. So even if I have to phone in, not during dinner time. But I think it's just all about boundaries. I read a quote recently, I think it was Einstein or somebody, who said, basically, work fills time. And I believe that's true. If a client gives you a week, you'll do it in a week. If they give you a month, it'll take you a month. And I think we all have to remember that and impose on ourselves as well. I'll tell you something, though. We have summer Fridays in our office. I don't know if that's just a New York thing or if everybody does that, where you close at 1 on Friday. Work's done. People are done. It's 1 o'clock, right? People are gone.
I don't think we've done that here. I don't know.
Yeah, it works.
It works.
People become very efficient.
So I don't know any I know one ECD that's a woman, and she just has her house husband. And so every time I'm always like, okay, every single person that's a creative director that comes back that had a kid as a creative director, but you have to be management, right? I've never seen a senior art director have a kid and be able to come back. So you're all management level, right? So you're not in it. In the same way you're not doing the 2 o'clock in the morning situation. So is it don't try unless you become a creative director?
I was an ACD, I think, when I had my first baby. She's now 13, so it's been a while. But I don't really see that. I think it's almost harder. The more responsibility you have, and frankly, the older your kids are, it's ironically harder than when you have a baby in a lot of ways, because they call you and they whine and they need stuff and they need you to take them somewhere. It's just so much more demanding than keeping them on a schedule and changing their diaper, which is very, very demanding at the time. Don't get me wrong, but I don't really think that it gets. I don't think it gets easier. I think it's just as hard to have a baby when you're a senior art director as it is when you're a creative director. It's a very tough time for a woman. And I remember leaving for maternity leave the day before. I was having a scheduled C-section, and I remember thinking, 3 months, I'm not gonna work for 3 months, what am I gonna do? I remember thinking it would be like the end of the world and they would forget me and I wouldn't, I would be back to being a fresh junior again. I remember having a lot of anxiety about that feeling. And I have to tell you, if any of you haven't had a baby yet, you come back in 3 months, it's like you never left. Some of the projects are still going on. You're like, the client never decided about this? We're retesting this? Things just don't happen as fast as you would think they would. So I would say never worry about that.
I've had women ask me, when's the ideal time? When should I start a family? I'm like, when you want to. When you want to, because
Absolutely.
it all works out. You can sit there and have this well-laid plan. Well, if I wait till later, blah, 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 or if I do it soon, just do it, and you make it work.
There was an article recently in The Atlantic about women can't have it all, written by a woman that worked for Hillary Clinton, and she dropped back in her work around her teen years. It wasn't birth for her. It was exactly what you said. It was the teen years that was harder. And she said that the structure is something that needs to change, and that kids need to go to school the same hours that people work, which would help immensely. I think we have some more questions.
Hi, so I just was listening to some of Sheryl Sandberg's talks where she talks about, don't leave before you leave. And advising young women who haven't yet maybe had kids to basically, put their foot on the gas until they have to walk out the door, whether that's having kids or deciding they want to downshift or whatever. So my question is, for you, all of you up there, before you had your kids, did you make any shifts in your career knowing that you were going to have kids, or were you just kind of full steam ahead, doing what you're doing, and then figured it out later after kids came?
I was full steam ahead, I think, because I even remember being on a pretty hectic project when I was in my first trimester and being like, because you don't know how you're going to feel when you're pregnant. You have no idea. Everything's new. So you just assumed it's just going to be me while I'm pregnant. And you don't put it together. I didn't. Until he actually got here, that was when I was like, oh, okay, this is a baby, and now I know what to do with this. I mean, I didn't take it lightly. I mean, I knew becoming a parent was going to be huge, and that was actually, I stepped back and said, am I really ready to even do this? Because I knew it was going to throw my whole world into, upside down. So I think mentally I was probably I was trying to prepare, but I wasn't changing anything that I was doing at work, because I just said, just keep plugging, it's happening, it's happened. Now I just have to wait and see how I can respond and how I'm going to be when I get back. But no, I don't think, I didn't sort of change trajectory or try to back up, because you just, if your plan is to come back and try it, then I wouldn't say take your foot off the gas.
I think with your first child especially, it's better just to believe you're unstoppable and just keep going and move. I think your second or third child, you start to go, all right, it'll work out, whatever.
Yeah.
But the first one, I think you just have to plow through. I'll tell you something, my partner, it's a classic story, but she was pregnant out to here at a pre-pro for a huge around-the-world shoot. And she's sitting there at the pre-pro, like she's going to the shoot. She's like, this baby isn't coming out yet, like I'm going.
Yeah.
And you're like, any minute you're gonna pop. But that was her mindset. Like, I'm here until I'm not here.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you have to be, because even after you have kids, they get sick, or someone cracks their head open and needs stitches. I mean, there's always you're there until you can't be there, and then, I mean, we've all been, at pediatrician offices on our iPhones, looking at copy or whatever. So you have to just full steam ahead all the time.
I had a question. So I'm not in the creative world. My name is Shakira, and I'm the bottled water Vita. So I've done the reverse. When I started my family young, and now they're teenagers, and I did what you did. I didn't apologize. I did what I was supposed to do, because they saw the value and they understood. But we had a better schedule, because it was 8 to 5. Weekends were off. So I was a mom. Mm-hmm. But now I'm doing the reverse. The days are long, I'm missing dinner, I'm not there at the football games, and I'm still not apologizing, but the conscience, the guilt is really creeping up. So how do I deal with me?
See, but that's what I think we do it to ourselves. We believe it's supposed to go a certain way. And this is where, and maybe this is just a defense mechanism, I've always believed it, it's quality of time, not quantity of time. Mm-hmm. So. And you kind of have to accept that, right? Because even if you marker in your family and pencil and work, it's going to come out of your hide somewhere. So you're going to get back online late at night or whatever. So it is a quality versus quantity. And then I just think if it's really like killing you, then you do have to ask yourself, what can I change? What can I do to give a little bit more to the family? And what's the cost of that to your profession, right? I mean, because you don't want it to chew you up inside, right? That's hard.
My advice is just love what you do and remember why you do it, and just let go of it. Yeah, but just let go of it. I mean, you're setting such an amazing example for your kids when you love what you do. I think one of the most important values I'm trying to instill in my kids, they may see me frantic, they may see me harried, they may see me miss stuff all the time, but they know I have passion for what I do. And I want them to have passion for anything that they choose to do, and I don't know what it is, and hopefully it's not advertising, but but it's passion, and I just think of that. That's a great example. There's nothing to feel guilty about. And you know what? A man would not feel guilty about loving what he does. He wouldn't.
Well, that's what else Sheryl Sandberg says. It's like, when men feel as guilty as women, we're going to be doing great.
Yeah.
Are there more questions?
No more questions.
Sorry, I wasn't watching. Sorry. Well, thank you, Kat, so
Thank
much
you.
for putting this on, and to all of our panelists.